Welcome back. You're tuned into Midcap Radar on CNBC TV18. Markets continue to inch higher at the high point of the day. It's a gain of more than 300 points that you can see on the Sensex. While the Nifty has now scored a century. In other important developments from the macro space, the Reserve Bank has announced its second operation twist. PSU banks are expected to see 3,000 crores in treasury gains. That's because the operation twist has resulted in the long-term bond yields falling from nearly 6.75% to 6.5%. So the decline in bond yields means it's positive for the bond prices which are held in the treasury portfolio of PSU banks, which is why PSU banks are doing well in trade. Ravikant Bhat of IndiaNivesh now joins us on the phone line to discuss his view. Ravikant, have you done the analysis? What is the treasury gain that we should expect the PSU banks to post as things stand now?
Rima, we just covered SBI, and I mean, if just going by the duration which PSU banks run, typically SBI also, our sense is these could be in the region of upwards of 15 to 16 billion. If you see the gains that SBI booked in the previous quarter, it was 13.3 billion on treasury, while there was a treasury loss in the first quarter. And if I were to look at the decline in yields quarter to date, I mean, it's been quite meaningful. So suffice to say that purely looking at the numbers in the previous quarter, and given that the duration typically tends to be slightly on the higher side on dated securities, the gains could be upwards of 15 billion for SBI alone.
Okay, and which would be roughly all the other PSU banks combined together, right?
No, I was speaking just of SBI,
no,
which
and another 15 billion for the others, right? Because SBI would be almost double of.
No, yeah. So SBI is agree. I mean, if one were to extend that logic, since SBI is approximately 25% of the system, so yeah, I mean, you could double that, safely double that amount for the other PSU banks.
You don't look at Bank of Baroda or PNB, no sense of what their treasury gains could look like?
No, as in we are not covering, so I'm sorry, I won't be able to comment on BOB or PNB specifically. But again, I mean, these are very large treasuries. BOB particularly tends to be very active, both on the bonds as well as on the currency side. And I mean, specifically for bonds, I think there are likely to be good enough gains for BOB. PNB also historically has had a very active treasury, so I mean, my sense is the gains over there could also be very meaningful.
Okay, so the change in yields has already been substantial this quarter, right? Do you expect yields to head much lower from here?
So we don't have a target on the yields, but I mean, if you look at the last 2 years, the swing in the yields has been quite, it has been a very broad range. We have had a situation wherein the yields did go up to 8%, and from there they have retracted. So this is something which is which definitely was not in our numbers. This kind of a movement in yields, and whether it can go down further, it's anyone's guess, I think. So the whole operation twist itself came in, did catch many by surprise. So I think possibly there's a downside, but let's wait and see.
The 10-year bond is currently at 6.51. What is the point-to-point difference from Q2 end to current levels?
I think it's at least, so if I were to look at Q2 for the 10-year bond, it was somewhere around 685. So we are talking of at least a 35 basis points decline on a point-to-point basis.
Okay, Ravikant, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining in. There has been a 35 basis points decline in the 10-year bond yield so far in Q3. And if it stays at this level of 6.51%, then SBI could see treasury gains of about 1,500 to 1,600 crore rupees in the December quarter.
Okay, and let's talk a bit more about PSU banks then. ICRA has